Slowly but surely, I began to shut down. I was preparing to die. Psychologically and physically. Hello, I am GD, your host and writer for Out of Context. This is my third channel update, and is intended to cover who I am. It's a long story, so let's continue. In 7th grade, I was pulled out of school. My mother attempted to substitute my schooling requirements with homeschooling. She used computer programs to teach us mathematics and substituted reading with Bible studies. Writing was attempted, but I didn't like it. Book reports, specifically. I've always hated mandatory reading because you couldn't choose what books to read. But writing about those books is even worse because you have to comprehend things you have no interest in or reason to understand. Reading something is easy until you have to force yourself to remember and comprehend the thing you are reading. Reading comprehension is important, but forcing it in such an unintuitive and inorganic way is just wrong. I came to realize that I could not support the emotions I was feeling up to that time. I decided to step back, let myself observe my experience. I could not safely judge my situation or the people around me. Even if stepping back meant putting myself in a situation of unreadiness, I had to risk the consequences. If it meant that one day I could understand myself and the world I was a part of, it would be worth the risk, arguably. We lived with my mother during the week, and the weekends were spent with my father. During this time, I found myself liking my father more than my mother. This wasn't because I liked my father, per se, rather because I had more freedom with my father than I did with my mother. Truthfully, I didn't like either. We moved again, and my mother remarried. My mother's husband was different than my father. He was louder and more aggressive with affection, but he was prone to interpreting my actions and disposition as disrespectful and ignorant. None of this was my intention, and eventually I developed a hidden hatred for him too. After my 13th birthday, my mother and her husband declared their intent to move far away. I would be taken with them. This upset me. I didn't want to be so distant from my father. Again, not because I liked him, but because I needed a chance at freedom from her, and eventually her husband too. But there was no choice, and I was too afraid, uncertain in my hatred, and depressively sad. I saw no hope in opposing them. Besides, it's not like I wanted to live with my father. I didn't like him. I just wanted freedom. So, we moved. The house was impressive, like a small castle and tower outpost, overwatching a bridge and road entrance to our small village. However, this new residence of ours, of my mother's husband, was a fixer-upper. The air and dust, it was unclean. I suffered with allergies to the dust and whatever else was afflicting me. My first nights there were a nightmare. Sneezing, runny nose, itchy flesh turning raw. My mother's husband was not impressed. Apparently, children who suffer and offer suggestions, like sleeping in the car instead of inside, are complainers and punks that need to experience a tough lesson about the world they live in. Slowly and quietly, I hated him even more. Eventually, we moved back to our previous residence, only temporarily, while we gathered the remainder of our belongings to transport to our new house. My mother's husband investigated the condition of the house and discovered old carpeting covered up by the original owner. These carpets were saturated in dust and dry urine. Not good for someone allergy sensitive. He apologized, but he would habitually judge me as a young punk whenever I did something, by accident or by intention, that he disagreed with. An apology after harsh judgment doesn't fix the psychological damage one does by their judgment. Although I suspected his actions as intentional, his cruelty was not certain. Nevertheless, I still hated him. Slowly, we would improve the property. We, my brother and I, would be the labor necessary to complete these tasks. My brother was approximately 2 years older than me. I don't mention him much, because most of my memories are of memorable things and the feelings that keep with me to this day. My brother isn't one of those things. Although, my brother was a pretty avid torrent user, downloading and burning lots of music to CDs and DVDs. My appreciation for my brother grew when I learned that he could create custom DVDs of music for CD players. My brother, although not my friend, is probably one of the few people during my younger years that I maintained a neutral relationship with. He did not pursue interaction with me, which meant there was little chance for me to become chronically angry with him, or for his presence to induce anger or malice within me. Although I didn't like him sharing schools with me. Generally, we didn't go to the same schools, but I became concerned that my brother would induce the existence of rumors, resulting in my getting bullied. These feelings dissipated once our homeschooling began. I didn't mention it, but my brother was pulled out of school at the same time I was. Months passed as I slowly acclimatized to the village and my new life there. I was halfway through my grade 9 Matthew C. course when I was told that my brother and I would be entering high school. During homeschooling, if we had completed our work for that particular day, we could use the rest of the day to do whatever we wished, with limitations. High school would be like going back to school again for the first time. I was apprehensive about this, but suspected I had no say in the matter. But maybe things would be different now. I wouldn't fight. I would only observe and do my best to understand. But even as a teenager, I was still a child with basic knowledge, knowing not that much more than when I entered this world. Grade 9 was not easy. We started school in the second semester, meaning that all of our grade 9 mandatory credits would have to be taken immediately before the next school year started, or at least that was my understanding. The only thing that I remember from my first day of high school was some random girl. "Hey, hon, want to have a good time?" she said. I was immediately culture shocked. Now, it's not like older high school students would target the freshman students sexually. And as far as I'm aware, sexual interaction at our school between students wasn't that high. Not that I would truly know. With that said, I couldn't understand an advancement like that, even if it was meant as a joke. My mother seemed to have a very unhealthy perception about male sexual health, regarding both masturbation and sexual intercourse. What specifically was unhealthy is hard to say, but she believed that masturbation was not appropriate for a healthy male to perform. It was the same with sex before marriage. Unfortunately, I had a very confusing introduction to my sexual awareness as a male. No guidance, since I could not trust my secrets to my untrustworthy parents. My mother became aware of my awareness, and she passive-aggressively shamed my conduct. She didn't specify, but instead delegated my lessons to God, of all things. For someone that doesn't have a relationship with an entity that cannot be seen or heard by unprayerful attempts at communication, it isn't a great way to teach someone, in my opinion. But my mother wasn't certain she could teach us the right way to live, so she tried using God as our teacher. Of course, she made her own interpretations regarding God's laws. The result, when that girl, whether jokingly or not, offered sexual intercourse to me, I was appalled. Not only that, but my malice began seething inside. Why malice? Well, something else happened to me. Before I became sexually aware, and long before we moved, I had an encounter. I spotted a student at a dance club for juniors, basically children and young teenagers. It was a very short interaction, but it had a significant impact on my perception of women. The student was an enemy of mine, a bully, if you will. He was slow dancing, basically holding a partner close to them and waddling in a small circle, with a girl. I didn't know this girl. He looked up at me, grinned, nodded his head in my direction, and continued dancing. Now, that hurt. It's possible he meant nothing significant by his actions, but it felt like he was using that girl, and the fact that they were both dancing together, to belittle me. Honestly, it was emotionally heartbreaking that my witnessing the affection of a male and female would be used in such a manner to spite my antisocial self. Regardless of whether it was intentional or not, it hurt. I left the dance club and sobbed uncontrollably. My father followed me out, not having witnessed what happened, and me not being able to communicate what had happened and what I was feeling. It seemed like women could be used as tools to manipulate men into feeling a certain way. I didn't like that, because I couldn't afford to feel as vulnerable as I did that day. And so, when that woman offered her services to me, I could not see her doing so without intending to cause me irreparable harm, psychologically, emotionally, or perhaps even physically. So, not a good start to the day. I was on edge now. The rest of the school year didn't go so well, especially English classes. As I mentioned before, I despised book reports. Reading was fine, until you had to remember what was being read. Then, since you didn't remember what was read, you had to reread the whole chapter because you can't seem to skim through and find what you are looking for. I honestly think that book reports are the laziest way a teacher can assess your reading comprehension and writing skills, especially when you have no interest in the subject matter, or have yet to be taught the importance of reading in an intuitive, comprehensible manner. I'm not sure if my current reading comprehension or writing skills are good. With that said, I never learned any of them from those awful book report projects. And we had to do 3 of them within a single semester. Sure, I could probably do them now, but for an unmotivated student to do that task while having no interest in the specified subjects? And then there was mythology. Why? Why is mythology part of a mandatory credited English class? This bothered me, mostly because we didn't seem to learn anything English language related. I suppose it also bothered my mother, since she was Christian. If it bothered me too, it was only because it bothered my mother, and I felt obligated to feel bothered, to keep up appearances that I was Christian too, because how could a Christian mother allow her children not to be Christian, right? Anyways, that class was awful. No other class matched how awful it was. Luckily, I passed. Barely. Thank you for listening in. Have a wonderful day.